Survivor Solvers, the holidays are coming, and that means gift giving. We have a bunch of fabulous new merch over at resolvedmysteriespodcast.com/merch. There are shirts and totes and mugs and other gifty goodies. We also now have a sponsor page, which has some great gift ideas like Unidragon puzzles and Audible subscriptions. And there are some other unique gift opportunities for fans of RM, like sending your honey some love on our Resolved Mysteries billboard or signing them up for our Patreon. So head over to resolvedmysteriespodcast.com and click on advertising and support for more information.
This podcast contains adult language and stories of true crime. If you don't like laughing, crying, or being horrified at the actions of other humans, this podcast is not for you.
Hello, listeners. Welcome to Season 4, Episode 15 of Resolved Mysteries.
Ooh, hi.
Hello.
This is the show where we rewatch, recap, and give you the latest updates to cases featured on the show Unsolved Mysteries. And I'm Eliza.
I'm Alison.
And I'm Karlin.
Welcome to our show. Before we get started, as most of you know, for every review we receive, we donate $1 to a different organization, and this month's is Frosted Faces, which was recommended by Sean, who we love. If you missed last episode when we described it, a frosted face is referring to an old pup, where they get those white faces, and that is so nice.
And they need love, too.
They need love. Sean is a patron and was able to recommend that nonprofit to us. And if you'd like to do the same thing and also get access to ad-free episodes, 2 additional episodes a month, and early access to listener short stocks, you can go to patreon.com/resolvedmysteriespodcast. So what are we covering this episode in part 1 and 2?
I go first, and it is the unexplained death of Phillip Fraser.
And then we have a missing case about the crew of the Casie Nicole.
And next week, I'll open it up with the Lost Loves about Mac McDonald.
It's the first problematic Lost Loves, I think.
Yeah. It's not as heartwarming as they often are, is it?
And then I wrap it up with a true dick bitch, and it's a wanted segment of William John Wood.
Okay.
All right, let's do it. So this is the tragic, unexplained death of Phillip Fraser. So the segment begins with overhead shots of Alaska, which is a really beautiful place. And Stack says, Alaska, America's last frontier. Highway 1. It's the lifeline, a thin asphalt ribbon which cuts through Canada's Yukon Territory to the continental United States. And as this is opening, I'm thinking, how the hell is Alaska part of America?
Isn't it crazy?
It is
weird.
Fully attached to Canada.
Oh, yeah. And almost to Russia.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay. I was like, okay, because I listened to that Royals podcast about how we got Hawaii and like we totally screwed over that queen and it was like terrible. Okay, who did we screw over to get Alaska? It turns out it's really boring. We didn't screw anybody over. Russia wanted to get rid of it and we bought it for 2 cents an acre.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
It was like the first Black Friday deal that America ever had. And then I read the American people, of course, were like, we hate Alaska. We don't want Alaska. And then they found gold and they were like, we love Alaska. We love Alaska. So starting in 1896, everyone loved Alaska because there was a lot of gold there. So anyway, sorry, I digress. On June 14th, 1988, Stack says 25-year-old Phillip Fraser, the son of 2 physicians, left his home in Anchorage to enroll in a pre-med course at Evergreen College in Washington State. Phillip packed up everything he owned for the trip, including 2 handguns, which is odd.
Anytime
Alaska,
there's more
baby.
than one, I'm just...
Do you need that for Evergreen? Is it a real rough and tumble kind of place, or is it a super liberal arts college?
But he was traveling alone.
He was. On June 17th, after losing 2 days to car trouble, Phillip crossed the border into Canada. Corporal Craig Gates of the RCMP says that at Beaver Creek, which is like a crossover, a border point, Phillip was entering from Alaska into the Yukon Territory. Phillip told the customs agent that he had 2 personal firearms, and at that point, the agent seized the firearms from him, as it is illegal for Americans to enter Canada with any kind of firearm.
Which also, can we talk about what customs looked like?
Oh my God, it was a shack.
It was a shack and 2 orange cones and 2 men.
Yeah. The border crossing guard says he can't bring his guns in. Canada's like, get the fuck out of here, you gun nut.
Seriously.
But then I looked it up, and Canada has the 5th highest gun ownership rate in the world. So they like their guns too. So after a 1-hour delay, Phillip Fraser is on his way. His guns became the property of the Canadian government. The next day, 600 miles from the border checkpoint, a hitchhiker was dropped off at the 40-mile Flat Cafe, owned by Gay Frockledge, and Gay and her daughter, Tina, were on duty. Gay says that the person who dropped the hitchhiker off didn't come in. They just dropped him off and left. And she says just looking at him out the window, she could tell that there was something wrong with him. Quote, in appearance, wasn't comfortable. She said to her daughter, hey, Tina, we got a winner here. There's something wrong with this guy. After like years in the restaurant industry, I totally felt that. I know exactly what you're saying.
I just feel like the reenactment did not portray that.
Totally.
He didn't look as weird as they made it seem.
At all.
Absolutely.
He just seemed like a guy who was keeping
just
to himself.
sitting there.
And there's like a couple points of contention in this segment that come up later. And his appearance and his presentation in this segment is definitely one of them.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Tina then says that she said to her mom, quote, maybe he escaped from a mental institution. And I kind of love this mother-daughter duo. Tina's hair is as epic as any 90s Canadian teenager girl's hair could be. Mm-hmm. Full bottle of Depp and a full can of Aquanet. And it's like glorious and amazing. And I just love their vibe. I love them hanging out in a diner. I'd watch a show about them.
Oh, yeah.
So Gay says that she wouldn't leave Tina alone in the building because there was no one else there except this weirdo hitchhiker. Mm-hmm. I love this, though. She sends Tina out to go wait on him, and she stands in the kitchen.
I know.
Yeah. Well, because she was about to leave, right?
Yeah, she's like, girl, I'm here for you, but you go do this.
Yeah.
As your mother, you got to do this. So right after the hitchhiker gets there, Phillip Fraser pulls up in his car. Gay says that Phillip didn't initially come in, but it looked like he was searching for something inside his car. At the same time, another car pulled up needing gas. So this is like a little gas station, diner, roadside thing. So Tina went out to get the person gas, and as she walked by Phillip, they said hello. They had like a small exchange. Stack says that Gay and Tina were relieved when the hitchhiker finally paid his bill, and they make it a point to say that he paid with Canadian money. Mm-hmm. Gay says that she watched the hitchhiker go out and approach Fraser. The hitchhiker asks for a ride, and Phillip says no because he isn't ready to get back on the road just yet. That's in the reenactment. However, then Gay says that Phillip sat in the car for a few minutes and then pulled ahead like he had second thoughts. So in the reenactment, Phillip is pulling out of the parking area slowly, and the guy, I guess Phillip's window is down, and the guy says, oh, are you still going this way? I thought you were going to have a bite to eat. And then Phillip kind of like speeds up a little bit, and then Gay says that the hitchhiker ran beside Phillip's car, grabbed the passenger side door, and jumped in, and that Phillip and he drove off.
Yeah.
No.
Everybody on the message boards is like, what was that conversation? What happened there?
I wondered if, like, he was planning to go in and eat. He wasn't like, I'm leaving right now. And then this guy was acting fucking weird. And he was like, I'm getting creeped out. I'm going to leave.
Yeah.
So he started trying to leave. And then the guy, like, forced his way in the car.
Yeah. I mean,
hate
it's just as good a theory as any because nobody knows what was said. At first I thought, why didn't he speed off? Why would he... But then I saw the geography of where this place was, this little roadside place. And basically there's a long road off of the highway where you can only go a couple miles an hour. So you can't go speeding off because the geography and the terrain kind of won't allow you to. So no matter what, Phillip was kind of stuck because he could only go a certain mile an hour out.
Yeah.
And then someone had a really interesting theory that because Philip's car had been acting so funny, maybe Philip was concerned that if he didn't give this hitchhiker a ride and his car broke down, the hitchhiker would later then catch up with him. And he would suffer the consequences
scary.
that way, which I thought was really interesting.
That is interesting. I also wonder if it was like a, the whole fuck politeness thing. Like maybe the guy was like, well, if you're going, like, give me a ride.
Yeah.
Give me a ride, man. And so he just kind of relented.
But this is where, obviously, and later too, but if he had had his gun right there, he could have just been like, get the fuck out of my car.
Yeah. It's important to note that both of his guns were in a locked box in his trunk. So he would not have had easy access to that gun.
But if he needed to get out somewhere he wasn't sure about, he would have probably taken one. Yeah.
Absolutely. So Gay says that as they left the yard, Tina made a remark that man is going to live to regret the day that he picked this man up. Gay says it was like a sixth sense that this man was capable of anything. At this point, I really wanted to find out more about how this man was acting because, like you said, in the reenactment, he looked like a big guy with a pot belly and greasy hair.
Yep.
He wasn't acting aggressive. He wasn't acting mentally ill. So it's hard to get a read on why they disliked him so much from the jump. From the minute he got out of
that
that
was
other
such
car.
a weird choice in the reenactment.
Yeah, it is. So Stack says that 8 hours later and 200 miles south of 40 Mile Flat Cafe, Eddie and Pauline Olson of Katwanga, Canada, pulled over to help a stranded motorist. Eddie Olson. Come on, Eddie. What you doing? Eddie Olson. I mean, he's a sweetheart, but so many bad choices.
Truest sweetie.
Truest sweetie that could have gotten him killed, but yes.
Yes.
To his own detriment.
Yes, the truest sweetie to his own detriment, 100. Eddie Olson says that he could tell that the man was nervous, but he thought he was just scared of being stuck on the road so late and didn't want to stay out there late at night because it's kind of a remote area. And Eddie tells him that he would tow him to his house and that they would figure it out in the morning.
Can you imagine?
Oh my God, you meet a nervous stranger on the side of the road and you're just like, hey, you want to sleep over?
People didn't know. He's like, this poor kid is having trouble and he's just trying to get to school and I better keep him safe.
Oh, yeah, because he told him.
But he didn't know that at the time. He didn't know that on the side of the road. They didn't find that out until the next morning. That was the story.
Okay.
But still.
Yeah.
His moral compass was like, don't leave this kid alone.
Hey, baby, it's that Canadian hospitality. What you going to do, you know? So Olson says that he slept downstairs in their basement. And I was like, oh, that's not good. Next to the 12 to 15 guns in a gun case.
My Lord.
Sure.
Because, of course, you want to put your guns in the same room that you put your adopted drifters.
It's just some wild choices we're making.
Oh, yeah.
Also, in the reenactment, the way he just flopped on that couch.
Fully akimbo. Oh, I know.
All the
He was
limbs
like,
everywhere.
Okay, this is perfect.
This is how I'm sleeping.
He's like, things are working out and I am relaxed.
So Stack says that the next morning, the young man... Okay, also, I need to call out. They keep referring to him as a young man, but the reenactor is fully 35 years old.
Oh, at least, yes.
100. Yeah.
I feel like he's older than me. He is not a young man, but they keep calling him that. I don't know why the casting was so bad for this.
Yeah.
So the young man told the Olsons that his parents were both doctors in Anchorage and that he was on his way to college in the States to study medicine. He tells them that he's pre-med, and I took a screen grab of it. He's like got this greasy, messy hair. He's in a fully yellowed t-shirt, like an undershirt t-shirt. And like, if I were the Olsons, I'd be like, he's probably not pre-med.
Yeah. He's no Phillip Fraser.
He's no Phillip Fraser. Yes, by no stretch of the imagination. So Olson says that he started talking to the man about his car, and the man said that he would like to sell it to him for a plane ticket to Seattle. I later read that initially the man had asked Olson for money, and when Olson was a little apprehensive, the man then said, I'll just do it for a plane ticket to Seattle. But because the man so quickly renegotiated his terms, Olson said that the only way that he would buy it is if he waited until Monday and they went through customs. But the man said that he couldn't wait because he had to be in Seattle by Monday. So Stack says that the Olsons were surprised when the young man pulled out 2 wallets and began to behave secretly.
Good job, bud.
I hope Pauline was fully kicking him under the table.
Yes.
Totally.
I hope Eddie's shins were bruised purple by Pauline just kicking him, being like, what did you do?
What have you brought to us?
What fresh hell? So in the reenactment, and I read later, the reenactor says, oh, you've been so like hospitable. Let me give you something. And I read later that the Olsons were like, no, absolutely not. Don't give us any money. Just get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
But this guy insisted. So he pulls out these 2 wallets and he gave the Olsons $20 in American money. And then he left. In the reenactment, it says he left to get his car fixed. But actually, he fixed his car with Eddie on the Olsons' property. And within an hour, the young man was back on the road headed south. For some reason, Stack doesn't tell us that he fixed it there, but he lets us know that it was nothing more than a broken fan belt.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
It's great because I have a ton of automotive knowledge, so I totally know what that means. I can definitely piece that together. So 12 hours later, the charred ruins of Phillip Fraser's car were found at a car wash in Prince George, British Columbia, 300 miles from the Olsons' home. 300 miles in 12 hours is very odd. That trip should have only taken 4 hours.
Yeah, at most.
What was happening for the other 8 hours? Corporal Craig Gates of the RCMP says that the car was gutted on the inside due to the fire. He says that nothing of any significance was found in the car, and in fact, none of Phillip Fraser's belongings have ever been found. Gates says that Phillip's parents were contacted in Alaska, and there was a great deal of investigation done because Phillip was considered a missing person and potentially a homicide victim. Dr. Robert Fraser, who is such a honey, I love the Frasers.
So sad.
Philip's father says that he was sure that there had been foul play, but he kept hoping and thinking all sorts of alternatives. Like maybe he wanted to ditch his car and be on his own. But then he knew intellectually that that was wrong because his son loved that car. Which is such a funny thing to say. Like you would think a parent would say their kid wouldn't disappear because they love their family.
Well, or even just who would just leave their car behind? Like that makes no sense logistically.
Well, and that's why he's describing so perfectly what that feels like, of like you cannot believe the worst, so you're trying to come up with any explanation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They're both so articulate. Stack says that 6 weeks later, a body was discovered in a gravel turnaround area 70 miles from the Olsons' home. Gates says that investigators immediately thought the remains could be of Phillip Fraser, and they confirmed that it was him through dental records. And then they show Phillip's mother, Dr. Shirley Fraser, and she's completely choked up. It takes her like a couple seconds to even speak. She can barely get her words out. And she says that she thinks that any parent who has lost a kid feels like they have lost a part of themselves, like they are not intact themselves. She says it's very difficult to describe in words. You feel like your life and your family has been truncated, cut off. Dr. Robert Fraser says that he felt angry and bitter, and he wondered what sort of person, what kind of person would destroy someone so idealistic and so full of life. And it is so sad.
So sad.
Stack asks what really happened along that lonely stretch of Highway 1. The RCMP theorized that the hitchhiker learned everything he could about Phillip Fraser and then killed him. He then stole his identity, his possessions, and destroyed the car. Gates says the man is definitely a dangerous person. He has taken one life, and he has the capability of taking more. He says he can't say whether he's done it before, but he knows that he's taken at least one life, and he would consider the man very dangerous. Then they show some composite drawings based on the descriptions provided by Gay and Tina Frockledge and Eddie and Pauline Olson. So the man is white, 5'9", and weighs about 225. Stack then says he has a flabby belly, which overhangs his belt.
Oh my God, I didn't remember that.
Yeah.
And is between 20 and 25 years old with brown hair and brown eyes. Authorities believe the killer is familiar with the Toronto and Seattle area, and he may be masquerading as Philip Innes Fraser, because among the items never recovered were Philip's birth certificate, visa, passport, and checkbook. Yikes. And then there is no update. So Karlin referenced Damian Moore and the American Crime Journal website, I think a couple episodes ago.
Yeah.
So he did a great write-up about this case. So I utilized his website and then some local newspapers. And since, yes, it is still unsolved, the wacky comment section of unsolved.com and the more reasonable comment section of Sitcoms Online.
Always that contrast, honey.
Because the unsolved.com comments are bananas.
Oh, yeah. That's where the cookies hang
Oh
out.
my God. Full on cuckoo bananas. Philip Innes Fraser was born on January 3rd, 1985. He was 23 at the time of his death, not 25, as UM stated.
How do you get that wrong?
He had two brothers, William and Robert Jr., and as we saw in the segment, both of his parents were doctors. Dr. Robert Fraser was an internist, originally from Philly, who fell in love with the Alaskan region and would become one of the region's most renowned experts on tuberculosis. He eventually served as the director of tuberculosis control for the Alaska Department of Public Health. He revolutionized TB treatment in Alaska and oversaw the reduction of TB from one of the highest rates in the world to less than 30 cases per 100,000 people.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. Dr. Fraser also instituted immunization programs in Alaska for children against multiple infectious diseases. Dr. Shirley Fraser was also a well-renowned doctor that worked as a neurologist. So these are smarty pants and really good people. Before he was murdered, Philip was a little lost. It seems like the family assumed that he would go into medicine, but Philip was really into the arts. He taught himself violin on his own and was really into theater and literature. So he went out to Maryland for his first year of college, which was a school in Maryland that was his father's alma mater. But he really missed Anchorage and the Pacific Northwest. So he left school and went back to Anchorage, and he was kind of aimless for a bit. And eventually he decided to go to Evergreen State College, which is a non-traditional liberal arts college near Olympia, Washington. His parents apparently didn't want him to drive down to Evergreen because the ride is 2,300 miles. But Philip was determined, and he planned to camp and sleep in his car along the way. And the car that he loved so much was a black 1983 Volkswagen Jetta. So we can track Philip's movements on that first day because he had to make a detour in Tok, Alaska, which is, from what I read, kind of like the last populated town before a stretch of like really barren, isolated highway. And when I say populated, it's got like 1,000 people, if that.
Yeah.
His car started acting up. So he stopped in Tok, Alaska, and his parents said that he called them and told them what happened, and they asked if he needed anything, and he said no, that he would be fine, and he would get back on the road the next day. And that was the last time that his parents ever spoke to him.
Gosh.
5 days after Philip departed Anchorage and last spoke to his family, his vehicle was found in Prince George, British Columbia. Along with the car being gutted on the inside, the license plates had been stripped away. So the police ran the VIN number, but that car hadn't been reported as stolen because Philip's family thought that he was still en route to Evergreen.
Right.
A lot of articles also mention that Philip was really independent and he wanted to forge his own path separate from his parents and their legacy. So I think they probably weren't worried that they hadn't heard from him in a few days. Because 5 days seems like a lot today, but I don't think it really was for that family and that situation at that time.
And that trip. And he's like 23. He's not like 18.
Exactly. Yeah, he's a grown man. So a couple of days later, the Anchorage police went to the Frasers to do a wellness check on Philip because they had traced the car to the Frasers' address. Like we saw in the segment, Philip was tracked because he had to turn his guns over to cross the border. But at that time, that still left 2 days that Philip was unaccounted for before his car showed up in British Columbia. American Crime Journal says that the police took this information to the media, which allowed them to spread the details of the case early on. Unfortunately, many in the region didn't exactly keep up with the news or, in some cases, modern technology. RCMP Corporal Craig Gates said, in referring to media access through the region, quote, "People out here just don't have access to it. Quite a few families live off the land around here. We have to visit every rest stop, gas station, campground, and store over thousands of kilometers to hang posters."
Oh, wow.
People didn't even have TVs.
Yeah.
Eventually, some tips did come through, and investigators were able to confirm that Phillip had stayed at a campsite near Dease Lake in British Columbia in the early morning hours of June 18th, which was the day before they found his car. On July 17th, 1988, more than a month after Phillip's disappearance, Phillip's body was discovered by a tourist, which is so weird that a tourist would be walking his dog in a gravel pit on a random highway in Canada and discover a murdered American.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Highway 1 either, which is what I assumed. The highway Phillip was driving on was 1, but this was Highway 37A, known as the Glacier Highway. So Phillip's cause of death was revealed as multiple gunshot wounds caused by a handgun, which I can't believe that UM didn't mention that Phillip was shot after mentioning Phillip's guns so many times.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so weird. They kept talking. There were guns in the basement. Phillip had guns. Guns here, guns there. And then they didn't bother to mention that Phillip was shot. It's so strange. Weird. So weird. So even though it's been over 30 years, the police will not reveal full details of the murder. I suppose they're holding back information in the case because, you know, stuff only the killer would know. And I guess they think that the case is still solvable to a certain point. They did say, though, that due to the decomposition of the body, it was believed that Phillip had been killed at around the time he went missing. So Gay Frockledge had called the tip line a couple of weeks prior to the discovery of Phillip's body. She told the police the same story she told UM, and the RCMP spent the next several weeks traveling along Highways 37 and 16, making sure to stop at each restaurant and gas station to hand out flyers with Phillip Fraser's photo and information. And this was smart because they figured that doing so may jog some memories about Phillip and create some tips. But also, if the hitchhiker was using Phillip's name, someone would recognize that the man using Phillip's name did not match the man's face on the picture. I thought that was smart. Okay, so now we're going to get to what the full description of this man was. This is from American Crime Journal. Quote, this hitchhiker was described as a white male in his early to mid-20s who had a large beer belly, rotten teeth, and strong body odor.
Oh, my.
He stood around 5 feet 9 inches tall, weighed around 225 pounds, and had brown hair and brown eyes. Most witnesses recall this man having stubble on his face, and he was described as being very unkempt. His walk was described as a waddle, and he was described as having some kind of mental disability. The man was also constantly biting his nails and was seen chain-smoking American cigarette brands, which he held between his index finger and his thumb. So this description is way better than what we saw in UM.
Yeah.
So this person outwardly had some characteristics of somebody that was mentally ill. So despite more than a handful of witnesses recalling specific details about this man, they were still unable to determine whether he was Canadian or American. And then some witnesses recalled seeing the man in Phillip's vehicle, but most recall him being the driver and the lone occupant. So no one actually saw them together except for Gay and Tina.
Wow, and good thing that even happened. I mean, it didn't matter, I guess, but
Yeah.
wow.
So the RCMP has continued to withhold specific details about Fraser's body and the crime scene. Basically, all we know is that he was shot. The RCMP did state that Phillip was executed by a coward in a hail of bullets, but we don't really know anything else. So that's all the hard information we have. So now it's speculation. And everybody has an opinion as to who did this. So I read on Fandom that many believe that Michael Wayne McGray most likely murdered Fraser. McGray is a Canadian serial killer convicted of killing 7 individuals between 1985 and 1998. He claims to have killed 11 others during the same time period. I found a write-up about him on Wikipedia, so I'm just going to read a little bit of that. In 1991, McGray was serving time in a prison due to a 1987 robbery conviction. However, he was given a 3-day weekend pass to stay at a halfway house in Montreal, Quebec during Easter weekend.
Why?
Sure.
You gotta. Because the Easter Bunny's gonna come. On March 30th, 1991, McGray met Robert Asselet in Montreal's gay village. Asselet invited McGray back to his apartment where McGray fatally stabbed him in the throat and the chest multiple times. The next day, on March 31st, 1991, McGray returned to the gay village and met Gaetan Ethier, who invited McGray back to his apartment. After spending the night at Ethier's apartment, McGray stabbed Ethier to death. Then McGray elected to not return to prison after his 3-day weekend pass. but was found nearly 2 months later and rearrested. At some point, he was paroled in 1995. February 28th, 1998, Joan Hicks and her 11-year-old daughter, Nina, from Moncton, New Brunswick, were murdered at their apartment. Joan was found lying on the floor in the bathroom in a pool of blood, having been beaten, strangled, and had her throat cut with a serrated knife. Her daughter, Nina, was found hanging in her bedroom closet by a piece of rope after having been choked with the rope.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God.
McGray was identified by a witness as the murderer and was arrested the next day. He later confessed to the murders of Robert Asselet and Gaetan Ethier in 1991. McGray also later admitted to being responsible for the 1985 disappearance of New Brunswick teenager Kimberly Amerio. And in May 2001, McGray was charged with the sixth murder, the 1985 killing of Elizabeth Gale Tucker, who was hitchhiking in Nova Scotia when he picked her up and murdered her. And then in November of 2010, McGray killed his cellmate, 33-year-old Jeremy Phillips.
Jesus Christ.
McGray claims to have killed 11 other victims across Canada, including Halifax, St. John, Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, and the American city of Seattle.
Oh, my God.
He also looks somewhat like the composite sketches. However, according to American Crime Journal, he was ruled out long ago, which I think is super interesting because people are still saying that it's him. Mm-hmm. And it makes me feel like sometimes people on the internet don't read the articles, which is like shocking. No, I'm just kidding, obviously. Next on the list, on the comment board suspects, is Roger Hohen Brady. We're not going to get too much into Brady because he actually appears in a later season of UM. I think the only reason why his name was mentioned is because he looks a lot like the composite, and there's a UM connection, but there's no other evidence to indicate that Brady was in the Yukon Territory in 1988.
Okay.
And then the last name I saw was kind of like, what? Because it was in the unsolved.com comments, and you know those are always cuckoo bananas. Mm-hmm. So a man named James said that he thought his brother could be the killer. His brother's name is Howard James Nodine, and sure enough, he looks so much like the composite. Oh. But he's not a serial killer. But he's just as bad, if not worse, because Howard James Nodine absconded his parole immediately after being released from prison, and a warrant for his arrest was signed in August of 1993. He had served 12 years for raping a 13-month-old baby girl in Poughkeepsie, New York, while on probation for sexually abusing a 14-year-old girl.
Oh, my God.
He's still on the run. America's Most Wanted covered him. And even though he looks a lot like the sketch, there is nothing linking him to the Yukon Territory. I feel like people don't fully understand Canada.
Yeah.
And then here's the final theory. And this is from Damian Moore at American Crime Journal. And you can tell that Moore really knows his stuff. This is one of the first articles that I've read by him.
Yes,
honey. Oh, my God.
I know.
And I don't always get down with his theories, but he educates himself, so...
Yeah.
And with what I'm about to say, the way he talks about the Canadian highway system, I thought that he was Canadian. I had to Google him. He's not. He's very American. But I'm just going to read you what he wrote because he can read a map and I can't. So here we go. Quote, personally, I don't feel Philip was murdered due to a spree or serial killer. The biggest piece of evidence, in my opinion, is that the hitchhiker knew personal details of Phillip Fraser that are usually acquired through small talk over time, not by threat or force. It appears that they traveled together for several hours and then something went wrong. Highway 37A leads back into the Alaskan Panhandle, which was definitely off Philip's projected route. That brings me to what troubled me most about this case, aside from his senseless execution. The location of Phillip Fraser's execution didn't make any sense. It appeared that the hitchhiker and Philip followed Highway 37 until they got to Meziadin Junction and then took Highway 37A towards Stewart, but only for about 9 miles. Philip was then killed and dumped at a gravel turnaround. Then the killer turned back and went back onto Highway 37 and proceeded towards Prince George via Highway 16. He goes on, I looked along Highway 37A for the gravel turnaround where Philip was executed. Based on the newspaper and police reports, his body was found in a gravel turnaround about 47 kilometers east of Stewart on Highway 37A. If I had to guess, about 9 miles From Meziadin Junction, right before the road starts to dip into the valley, there is a gravel turnaround and yard. He's amazing. There are boom gates to block traffic from coming into the valley in the event of an avalanche, flood, or severe weather that makes passing in the valley dangerous. Did Phillip accidentally miss turning left onto Highway 37 in the junction and set off the paranoid hitchhiker? Did the hitchhiker take control over Phillip much earlier in their trip and order him to that location just to kill and dispose of him? Or, like Gay and Tina Frockledge, did Phillip sense something was wrong with him, was afraid, and attempted to take him through a border checkpoint in order to get rid of him?
Whoa, that would be smart.
Yeah.
He says there was a specific reason for this detour that remains a mystery. He goes on, based on the evidence and every detail I could find and or inquire about, I firmly believe that Phillip either accidentally or intentionally missed his turn to relieve himself of this hitchhiker onto Highway 37 and continued on Highway 37A toward Hyder, Alaska, and to the U.S. border checkpoint, which the hitchhiker then panicked and forced Phillip to pull over and then executed him. And he says perhaps he didn't even threaten him, but told Phillip to drop him here or said he had to use the bathroom. And then Phillip used the bathroom and the hitchhiker started shooting him from behind. So that's a really great theory. Mm-hmm. It's super cool. Like, it would be really smart of Phillip to be like, I need to get rid of this guy. Let me just shoot back through. There's a border checkpoint. Like, let me just shoot through there and I can say, like, I'm in trouble and they can help me.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I expected a lot more discussion about this on the message boards, but it feels like a segment that everyone remembers, but nobody research. It's not a pet case of anybody, which is really sad because I do think, like, in some capacity, it may still be solvable. But even when Robin Warder covered it on The Trail Went Cold, it was one of two topics, which is what Robin does when he doesn't have information for a full episode. He, like, gives two topics on an episode. And then finally, sadly, Phillip's father, Dr. Robert Innes Fraser, passed away on June 5th, 2014. And Dr. Shirley Fraser is still a practicing neurologist in Anchorage, Alaska.
Wow.
And that is the story of Phillip Fraser.
Oh,
That's awful.
it's such a maddening one.
It is. It truly is.
I want to know why that serial killer was ruled out. Was he just not in the area?
I don't know. I mean, people, like, aside from what law enforcement knows, and I think law enforcement's really, like, holding a lot of information in. Mm-hmm. Like I said, which makes me think that they have a suspect or obviously they know something that we don't. But people were saying that McGray confessed to so many other murders, like he probably would have just confessed to Phillip's as well. Like there wouldn't be any reason
to hide it.
But they said that he murdered 11 more people, but he's not giving information because he wants them to, like, give him special treatment in prison. And they won't do that.
Disgusting.
Yeah. So, but I'm assuming that they know something that isn't public information about McGray, and that's why they ruled him out. I know.
Wow.
It's so sad.
It's so sad.
And it's just those parents' worst nightmare.
It is.
Like, that's exactly why you don't want to let your kid go do something like that. But you tell yourself, it's not, I have to just let them grow up. This is part of life.
Yeah.
They're going to be okay. And then they're not okay.
Yeah.
And
to me, it's just
terrible.
so obvious that he wouldn't have taken a hitchhiker. Like, he gave a couple excuses.
Yeah.
He tried to get away, and this person forced his way in. God.
I know. It's brutal. It's a heartbreaker.
Yeah. Well, good job.
Thank
That's
you.
terrible.
Oh, gosh.
Along with researching, recording, editing, and producing this podcast, I also manage the advertising opportunities. It is such a headache, and up until recently, it was one of the most tedious parts of this job. It used to be all but impossible to reach out directly to advertisers and companies. And then a fellow podcaster told me about Podcorn. It was a total game changer. Podcorn is a marketplace connecting podcasters to amazing podcast sponsorship opportunities, such as host-read ads, interview segments, topical discussions, and more. With With Podcorn, there is no middleman. Yay! Podcasters of all sizes can browse and choose opportunities right on the platform, set their own rates, and collaborate with brands directly without any exclusivities. You never give up any rights to your podcast, and Podcorn is here to support you at every step and ensure that you're protected and compensated for the work that you do for the brands. The marketplace mission is to give podcasters transparency, creative freedom, and full control of how and where we monetize. Through Podcorn, we worked with some amazing companies, and the whole process was completely transparent for both us and the advertiser. Podcasters, you gotta get on this. Explore sponsorship opportunities and start monetizing your podcast by signing up at podcorn.com/podcasters or click the link in the show notes.
So this is a missing segment, and it is about the crew of the Casie Nicole.
I am so excited for this one.
Oh my gosh. Turns out this is a lot of people's favorite segment.
Really?
Oh, cool.
It's a goodie.
And with this one, I want you guys to feel free to just talk about what you're thinking as it's going on.
Okay.
Because that's kind of what this one is about.
Okay. Love it.
Well, we're usually so silent during other people's segments.
Sometimes it's let them get through the explanation and save it for the end, but feel free because this is a wild ride.
Okay.
So Stack intros the segment telling us basically that the ocean is terrifying. He says this big long thing, but all of it boils down to that. And he says the sentence, "Sometimes the sea can be an unforgiving mistress."
Ooh,
Captain Stack.
Sexy.
He also gives us the terrifying stat that in 1990 alone, 865 people drowned in American coastal waters.
No, thank you.
So I had to look up a today stat.
You gotta.
In the U.S., an average of 3,500 to 4,000 people drown per year.
Shut the front door.
That is an average of 10 fatal drownings per day. And then that led me into it's mostly small children, and it's very sad.
No.
Between the ages of 1 and 5, that
in
is
the
a common
ocean?
reason for
On
death.
the shore.
No, not necessarily
coast?
for oceans. Some of it's at home, but drowning in general is
in the tub and in the pool and stuff?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
no.
it's bad.
It's bad. So our story. April 12th, 1990, in Richland Hill, Georgia, just south of Savannah, 4 fishermen were preparing for a 7-day voyage on the Atlantic. So we have 23-year-old Billy Joe Neesmith. He is the captain of the boat. The rest of the crew is his brother Nathan, who is about 32, his nephew Keith Wilkes, and their friend Franklin Brantley. The men were aboard a snapper boat that Billy Joe's boss owned named the Casie Nicole. And the boat had been in dry dock for maintenance for about 5 weeks prior to this, but she was back on the water. So Nathan says they were headed out close to 90 miles offshore. He says that the next morning, around 3 or 4, he'd gotten up to operate the boat. And I don't know if this was just they took turns kind of being in charge of steering while other people slept.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So he quickly notices that something is wrong. Instead of floating up and over the waves, it seems like the boat is pushing through them and that it's also pulling to the right.
Oh, my God.
So I know. It's so scary. Being in the dark in the ocean is the scariest thing ever.
Yes.
Nathan wakes up Billy Joe to tell him that something's wrong. So the two open up the trap where the engine of the boat is, and Billy Joe reports about 2 feet of water in there. Very similar
Not
to
good.
Eliza's segment from the previous episode.
Mm-hmm.
So they try pumping the water out, but their bilge pumps are not working. So they go wake the rest of the crew who were sleeping in the bow of the ship. And when they go in there, they realize there's a foot of water beneath their bunks that they're sleeping on. There is water in the boat.
No, imagine waking up like that. Ah!
So fucking scary.
Oh my
I can't even tell you.
No.
So the men form a line. They get out buckets. They're trying to bail it out. And they also took out their 2-man life raft.
Mm-hmm.
Again, there's 4 of them. It's a 2-man raft that can probably fit 1. They start calling Mayday on the radio, but there was no response. And I don't know if that was that it wasn't really working and they thought it was working, or what? Because nobody did hear their calls.
Maybe the water can affect the electrical system that makes the radio.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking there was like water in everything and like probably it wasn't functioning the way it should have.
But I feel like if you're on a boat, the radio should operate independently. Yeah. There's not like a backup for, I don't know. I mean, I know. I truly know nothing about boats, so.
I know. So there's no response. After a short while of calling on the radio, the engine of the ship gives out and all the power goes out.
So scary.
So scary. So they are like, oh my gosh, we have no radio. The boat is sinking. So they decide they need to abandon it.
God. In the night.
In the night.
90
in a
miles
two-person
off the
raft.
shore. Oh my God.
So then they realize that the raft is rotting and it has a hole in it. So he describes it as rotted, but he also says they weren't sure if it was caused by an anchor, like piercing it, or if it had just rotted out.
Oh my gosh.
He says, but we do know that it had a hole in it about the size of a quarter. The life raft was sinking by the time the sun started coming up. And then they spotted something floating in the water, which was the hatch cover from the Casie Nicole. It had popped up. Mm-hmm. So the men decide to tie their raft to the hatch cover so that they just have more flotation attached to itself. They start getting on top of it. But Nathan looked up and he could see the hull of the Casie Nicole floating what he thought was 3 or 4 miles away.
Gosh.
Yes.
Which is so far.
It's so far.
So far. So he said he thought he wasn't sure what kind of chance they had. So he thought maybe if he could make it to the hull of the boat, he could get them some help. So he started swimming. So according to him, the other men were like, no, don't go. Like, splitting up is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But he just does it anyway. And he just starts swimming.
Do they say why he thought getting to the hole? Is it like the Coast Guard would know to search that vicinity for the boat? Or like, why did he think going back to the sinking boat would provide some sort of like rescue or safety?
Yes. So this is what everyone is wondering.
Oh, okay.
Is why he thought this was a good idea, what he thought was going to happen over there.
Okay.
And he doesn't. So speaking about like them getting a little lazy with the segments, like, I don't know. To me, it seems like a time thing, like they're editing for time.
Okay.
And unfortunately, that's cutting out details that everyone wants to know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, we need to know more about this. Why did he make this decision?
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, I have some thoughts about it, and so do a lot of other people. But he says, essentially that he thought this was, like, the only thing he could think of to, like, help them.
Okay.
He says he swam from about 9 a.m. Again, this is, like, him guessing maybe somebody had a watch, but he thought it was about 9 a.m. He swims until just before dark to get to this boat.
How? How could you swim that long?
Mm-hmm. I know. When he got there, he noticed the stern of the boat floating another 100 yards away, so he swam some more. He swims until he gets there, and he says he literally was like, I cannot swim anymore. Like, by the time he got there, he was, like, about to, like, not be able to.
Well, he swam for, like, 13 hours, 14 hours. Yeah.
Again, we really don't know because this is just him guessing. So a lot of people said it was probably about 7 or so hours, but I don't know. I really don't know.
Okay, even that, though. That's crazy.
Even that.
Yeah.
He explains that he'd been swimming all day and, like, inevitably you're going to get salt water in your mouth. Like, there's just no way you're not going to when you're swimming all day. Mm-hmm. So he's drinking salt water. He's getting really tired. He's just, like, getting super, super weak. So he realizes he can't see the other men anymore. And he gets to the hole and he spends all night just, like, holding on to it. Like, it's the bottom of the boat. It's capsized. Parts of it are broken off.
It's not easy to hold on to. Probably.
No,
it's
there's
rounded.
like nothing really. He's just like holding on. And he did have a life vest on, thank God. But still. So the next morning, Nathan saw a ship over in the direction of his companions about 3 miles away. He noticed that it kept circling and made several stops. So he thought, maybe it's picking up my friends.
Yeah.
Because it seems like it's doing something. And it seemed like in the direction he thought they were. So he watches the ship move around in these circle patterns for about 3 hours, and then it disappeared.
That's so weird.
So Nathan laid atop what was left of the Casie Nicole and floated for 2.5 days. And then a bait box from inside the ship had ripped loose and popped to the top. It comes to the surface. He doesn't even know what it is, and he's like scared of everything at this point.
Yeah.
But he was like, I need to go check it out. So he swims over, and like the front part of the bait box had busted out. So he says it looked just like a boat to him.
Amazing.
So, and it was about the size of his body. Like, it was kind of like, I would liken it to like the size of a refrigerator, maybe. But it's wooden, and one side is broken out. So he can like climb inside and like rest on something and not have to be like clinging. He says that at this point, like, he's inside, and that's good. And he just felt like, this is where I need to be right now. But he was on the brink of death because it was super hot, and he was just getting sunburned, and he had not had anything to eat or drink. He had been downing all this salt water. Like, he was truly like, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
But he kept thinking about his wife and kids and thinking that he had to make it to be able to raise his kids. So he said he kept praying to God, don't let me die in this ocean.
Oh, my gosh.
So 10 a.m., April 15th, 1990, Nathan was floating 20 miles off the coast of Georgia when he was finally rescued. He had not had food or water for 4 days, and it was not in UM, but Nathan said that during that time he was hearing voices.
Yeah.
And he was just like hearing voices talk to him and praying the whole time. And he said, quote, I heard, this was not in UM. Quote, I heard people talking to me. He said, I drifted along. I heard people yelling out, Nathan, 338. It was like 3/8. I don't know how I'm supposed to read that, but Nathan 38. I'd jump up and look around. I thought it was somebody. Here I am looking around, and it was only the good Lord keeping me awake.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
And they show, I think they try to show it in the reenactment, but he's essentially like covered in blisters.
Oh my God.
Like, he's so sunburned that he's like unrecognizable practically. So he ends up having to spend several days in the hospital. He had hypothermia, severe dehydration, horrible blisters all over him. And then unfortunately, the other members of the crew of the Casie Nicole were never located. The Coast Guard did a search, and the men were never found, and neither was the raft or the hatch cover that they had been floating on. And then I thought, for sure, this is the end of the segment. But no. Stack explains to us how it now gets really weird.
Super weird.
October 5th, 1990, 6 months from the sinking of the Casie Nicole, Nathan and Billy Joe's sister, Onita Drawdy, and her mother were at Onita's house one day when the phone rang. Onita's mother answered but couldn't understand the caller, which was a man speaking in Spanish. The man didn't speak any English except to repeat Onita's phone number and say their name several times.
Weird.
Then Onita says the call was just cut off. The same day, Doug Tyson, the owner of the Casie Nicole, received a call. Again, it was a man speaking in Spanish, and the only thing they could understand was him repeating the Tyson's name and the phone number. Doug says 6 weeks later they were visiting the Neesmiths when they mentioned the strange call they'd gotten. Doug asked how long ago they'd gotten the call, and they said 6 weeks, and they realized they'd gotten the calls about the same time. Over the course of the year, Onita received 3 more calls, and the Tysons received 2 more calls.
What the fuck?
In one call to Onita on March 6, 1991, the caller finally spoke a little bit of English. Onita says the caller said, I'm bringing them home. But then the call was cut off, and there had been no more calls since that one. So in the segment, Onita and the Tysons kind of like explain what they think is happening. So they think that the freighter that Nathan saw had picked up the other men and taken them to another country where they were being held against their will. Onita thinks that the person who's calling is a friend of the men, and they'd probably been risking themselves to make the calls. Doug Tyson says that he understands that people are lost at sea. They are not usually found at sea. But the fact that the debris of the ship was never located is strange to him, as well as Nathan's sighting of the freighter and the strange phone calls. He says that all of this adds up to a tremendous amount of hope. Nathan says in his heart he feels like they're alive and he knows they had a lot better chance of surviving than he did. Which again, probably took out him explaining why he thought that. So they had taken food and water from the ship into the life raft.
Oh.
I was wondering.
Why do they not tell
meant.
us that?
Right.
Okay.
That is what happened. So, and he says that he doesn't think he could have made it without thinking that they had made it too.
And can you imagine how they felt once they saw him swim away past their sight? You'd
Yeah.
think they would think
anymore?
for sure he'd be dead because
Of
he didn't
course.
take
Yeah.
any food with him.
No.
So Stack tells us that when the men went missing, it was the largest Coast Guard search in the Atlantic Ocean in history. Billy Joe Neesmith, Keith Wilkes, and Franklin Brantley have been officially presumed dead, but there does seem to be reasonable hope that they may be alive. So the only solid update I have for you is that the U.S. government has legally declared all of the men dead.
Okay.
And that Nathan Neesmith is still alive and well. I did find him on Facebook. This is one of those cases where we really don't know anything, but people are talking about it.
Wow.
Of course. Oh my God.
As I mentioned, I start diving into the message boards and a ton of people were like, this is my favorite case. Like, this is the one that always stuck with me. Like, I remember this one from when I was a kid. So people really latched onto this one. So we were just talking about this in the last episode, but sometimes you get to the message boards and people are not saying what you think they're going to be saying.
Yeah.
So that is what happened with this one. I get on the message boards and everybody has problems with Nathan and his story.
What?
What? Ooh,
Everyone.
girl, what?
I didn't think that for 1 second.
Neither did I.
What do they think? What do they think?
They have problems with everything. So
Oh my God.
everyone just thinks everything is fishy.
No pun intended.
People think it's super weird that Nathan left the others to swim to the wreckage of the boat, which I agree. When the segment was happening, I was like, wait, what? And like you said, like, why did he
Why?
think that was better?
I just thought he had a reason, but they didn't tell us, so I thought maybe it would come
Yeah.
out.
And unfortunately, interviews with Nathan that I found were super minimal, and I already put in some of what I found.
Yeah.
So I do not know why he thought that was better. My only thought is that it was a 2-person raft. They were 4 men. The raft probably could have comfortably fit 1. All they had other than that was this hatch cover.
Yeah.
Nathan's over 200 pounds.
Yeah. He's a big guy.
So he's thinking, I mean, this is my guess. He's thinking, I can't cling to this thing with these guys. Like, I'm going to make this worse for them. And this is not sustainable. This is not, we can't do this.
Well, and the raft was sinking too.
And the raft was losing air. Like, it was eventually going to be completely flat and not help them at all.
Okay.
Well, and with the bait box coming up, I know he didn't know that would happen, but it does seem like going to the boat provides you with the possibility of more resources. Debris and stuff.
Yes.
Versus being completely alone in the ocean
true.
with just the raft that is not going to last forever.
That's a good point.
That was my thought too. Like, if he can see it from 3 to 4 miles away, it's big enough that he knows it can hold him. Like, if it's still floating this long after and he can see it, he knows it's big enough that it can hold him. And he probably thought, if I go over there and can stay afloat, that's a little better chance of us surviving.
Wait. So they think that, like, Nathan, do they think he was, like, shady?
People think something shady's happening.
I had so many other questions before even thinking that. Like, I still have
I
questions I
know.
wanted answered when I thought Nathan wasn't shady.
I know. I was so surprised by
happening?
this.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So a lot of people are like, why did he go there? Like, they didn't understand why he'd do it. And also they're like, power in numbers. Like, it's so much easier for a rescue team to see 4 people than it is to see 1.
Okay.
Why did he think this was a better chance? What did he think was on there that was going to help him? Then people think that it's totally bizarre that it took him 6 to 7 hours to swim to the boat.
I don't know. How long does it take to swim 3 miles or 4 miles?
He thought it was 3 to 4 miles. He really doesn't know. He's just looking into the distance.
Yeah.
He's wearing a giant life vest that's going to slow you down as you're trying to swim. He has no energy.
He's not like a swimmer. He's just a guy on a boat, right?
He's not a swimmer. He's over 200 pounds. It's gonna be a slow go. Like, there's no way he would have to stop and take breaks, I'm sure.
I feel like it would take me 8 hours to swim a mile.
Truly, I am not surprised at all by the amount of time that took.
Okay.
People also doubt that he could have made this swim.
Okay.
But I'm like, if you think your other choice is death,
Yeah. That's
you're going to do everything you can. You're going to use every last ounce of energy you have.
Yeah.
People think it's weird that he moved around to different vessels. They think it's weird that he left them. They think it's weird that he left the boat for the bait box. But it's like, he explains that. He explains, like, he could get inside and just rest in there like a boat, as opposed to, like, the hull.
I feel like that's a smart idea.
None of this is weird.
They think it's weird that the bait box was there. They think it's so weird that, like, one side was knocked out, that it was just a perfect boat for him. And I'm like,
This is not a conspiracy. What the hell?
What is in it for Nathan? Like, what would Nathan have gotten from orchestrating this or being involved in this in any way other than, like, a victim of circumstance?
Yeah,
like, what
there's a
was in it
couple
for
people
Nathan?
that do come up with something, but
gosh.
people wonder why when he saw the freighter, he didn't try to flag it down. It's like,
With his
it was
arm?
miles away. What did you think he was going to do?
Oh my gosh.
Then people are like, what was the freighter doing? Why was it circling so much? Why would it take 3 hours if they were picking people up? Okay, first of all, you can't just plow through people that are floating. Like, they can get sucked under the boat and, like, torn apart.
Have any of these people ever been rescued from the ocean?
Truly.
Right.
And let's not forget, Nathan was probably fucking delusional at this time.
I was going to say, was there
Did he
even
even
a
see
freighter?
a boat?
Yeah, that's what I was
Exactly.
thinking.
Was there a boat? Was it really 3 hours? Like, we don't know. He was not in his right mind.
Yeah, he swam all that way for all those hours, drank all that seawater. He's dehydrated. It could have been like a mirage. Maybe there probably wasn't even a freighter.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, if there was, like, who knows what it was doing? He probably doesn't know which direction is which, you know? Like, how can he even really say that's where my friends were? It's all just ocean. You can't see anything.
Truly.
So, okay, so then we get into, like, what people think might have been going on, and it all has to do with drug smuggling. So some people think the whole crew was doing some sort of shady drug smuggle business, but some people think it was just Nathan and that something went wrong and then he had to kill everyone.
Oh, please.
Please.
No.
He was, like, on death's door when he was picked up, and that is a fact. He was in the hospital for dehydration, being burned, all of it. Like, why would he risk all of this for this wild... Because people are like, well, Nathan was the one that discovered the water in the boat, and Nathan was the one that... And it's like...
Oh my God. If people thought Larry Rice didn't do it, certainly Nathan didn't
Race.
do it.
Yeah.
Larry
Yes.
Rice. Hey, Larry Rice, he really put himself at risk. He couldn't have done it. And they're like, Nathan did it.
I know.
Clearly,
Yeah,
Nathan got the
really.
short end of the stick over Larry Race.
Yeah.
Come on. You can't have it
People
both
were
ways.
like, it's really weird in the interview because he keeps looking down and he keeps looking to the left, and, like, those are signs of lying.
Oh my
and then
God.
one of the users that we often talk about was, like, just posted a link to the Wikipedia page for PTSD.
Yeah.
Like, this guy has been through so much stuff.
Shit. Yeah.
And, like, no shade, but he wasn't super well spoken. Like, he was
No.
kind of fumbling his words a little bit and making funny word choices and, like...
When is the last time you were interviewed for national television talking about the worst 4 days of your life?
Truly, when you almost died and you saw all your friends for the last time.
Yeah, have a little empathy.
Plus, 2 of the people on the crew were his family members. Like,
Yeah.
he's not going to kill them. I just can't get over it. I cannot get over how
He's
many
not
people
going
think
to kill
this is
them,
shady.
sink the boat, and then set himself out to sea in a bait cooler for 4 days.
No. I don't really think the drug smuggler angle is anything, but if it was, I could see maybe the crew wasn't drug smugglers, but the freighter was, and maybe the freighter picked them up.
Right.
Oh.
And so people link this to the phone calls in Spanish because the drug trade in Cuba. So they're like, maybe they stumbled upon these guys and picked them up.
But why would you pick up a bunch of Americans if you were doing illegal drug trade? Wouldn't you just leave them there?
Exactly, because then you've got all these witnesses.
Yeah, you're not going to pick up Americans and kidnap them and bring them to Cuba. Why would you do that?
Yeah. I listened to one podcast that was like, maybe they took them as slaves, but
I was going to say, I could see if they were 3 women, absolutely, they would be picked up. But 3 men from Georgia, like...
And why would they want any more heat on
Exactly.
them?
Like, why would you kidnap 3 Americans and bring them to Cuba when you have a terrible relationship with America?
Totally.
And you're working in the illegal drug trade. I do think maybe if there was a freighter, maybe they didn't see the men there and the boat passed too quickly and it made the men go under and the men drowned because of the freighter. And then the freighter circled around for a while to see if the men were going to come back up or if there was any survivors. I guess that's possible.
Yeah, I could see that. But in my heart of hearts, those men just died. They died in the water.
Yeah.
I started looking up sharks. There are sharks in that area off the coast of Georgia. There are sharks, guys.
Yeah.
That's awful.
Like, it's a little bit out of season for, like, the type of sharks that could, like, eat you, but it's possible. It was, like, right before, like, Shark Time.
It was right before Shark Week.
It was. Yeah, and people are just like, it's so weird that they were never found. I'm like, how many people were never found in the ocean?
Yeah.
So many.
And those people were on boats. Like Eliza just covered North Carolina. Entire boats of people went missing. 4 guys on a piece of wood. Yeah.
Yes.
You're done. Sorry.
It's just not far-fetched. And I do not understand why this is even a thing.
It's so sad. I feel bad for Nathan having to now, like, live with the internet suspicious of him.
Yeah.
That's terrible. Yeah. You have to know that he knows that people think that he did something nefarious to his family and his friends.
Yeah. Totally. And I was just going to say about the phone calls. My gut instinct is they were pranks because we've found so many cases where they were fake calls and just messing with the fucking family. And I don't know, it is weird. And Meg the Egg does believe the calls were real. She doesn't think that, like, Nathan has anything to do with anything, but she thinks the calls were real and related to the men.
Well, I did think it was interesting that after a long amount of time later, the person who called back did speak in English.
Yeah.
In my mind, they had taken the time to learn those phrases, kind of.
See, that's what was weird to me about the first few. I'm like, if you've taken the time to learn the last name, learn the phone number, and know how to say that, why didn't you learn a basic thing like they're safe or something like that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Something to tell them, to give them context for this call.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
It's so weird.
The poor family.
But I did find this one comment from 2016 from a user named GA Harley Girl T. And it says, I am family. As new developments are happening with this case, new production company looking into this cold case, I did a search not realizing how active this case still is after 26 years. I was 15 when my mom got the call. So her mom must be Onita.
Yeah.
She is the sister to Nathan and Billy Joe. Billy Joe was like my brother instead of my uncle, as he had lived with us for years while attending high school. This case broke my grandparents. Yes, there are lots of questions you have, and I assure you not all details were released during the filming or included. Clearly.
Of course.
Why did he leave the raft? Because they were not in the raft as it had holes. They were floating on a hatch lid, and Nathan was a big man. And every time he would go to get on the lid to keep the sharks away from them, he would sink it.
Oh, God.
It simply could not bear the weight of all of them. Franklin could not swim, so he had to be on the hatch lid. Keith had leg cramps from kicking so hard, again because of the sharks.
Oh, my God.
I know. That left Nathan and Billy Joe to be in the water and take turns. They had tied themselves together with rope. Nathan left them thinking he would die to save them. God. And for the one who said they were only 10 miles offshore, they were about 90 miles offshore in international waters.
Oh, my God.
After he clung to the bow of the boat that was bobbing in the water for over a day, the boat began to break apart, pieces began to float up, and that is how he got in the bait box. He then drifted for days until he was found 20 miles offshore by another boat. To this day, he has medical problems caused from the salt water. Wow. Again, there are many details that were not allowed to be included, but I can assure you that most of you are wrong.
Whoa.
I know, it's so sad. This has been a tormenting 26 years for all of the family. We buried my grandparents with broken hearts that they never got to see them come home. Billy Joe had 3 sons, one he never got to see born. They are now in their 20s and never knew their father.
Wow.
Wow.
My mom went to Cuba in search of them in the prisons.
I just got goosebumps.
I assure you there are many Americans being held, and our government knows this and does nothing. So many of you have automatically assumed the worst in everyone, and that is your human nature. But we forgive those who think the worst and live our life daily with the holes that this has caused in our large family.
Oh my
72 in just the immediate family. Should something transpire, I will try to update, but as of today, after the phone call years ago from someone we think was trying to help them, we have nothing. Please keep us in your prayers as we hold hope in God above to bring our boys home.
Oh my gosh.
So that is obviously real, and that's what happened.
Oh, it's terrible.
It's so sad. I just cannot believe. I cannot believe. I would say it was like at least 70 to 80% of the message boards were like,
That is so
This is
disappointing.
I know.
I hate that.
Yeah, that's
I cannot
heartbreaking.
believe. A couple of our OGs, like longtime message board people, were like, I didn't doubt his story for 1 second.
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
yeah.
I just want to know so much more information.
It's
I know.
just so sad.
There's so many weird details and things to wonder.
And from her comment, it seems like the family still does believe that the phone calls were legitimate.
I know they do, which is sad because I don't think they could have been.
I don't know.
It's just too weird.
I don't
What
know.
the heck is up with that, though? Why did nothing ever come of it?
Yeah, because someone was like, oh, you know, like maybe everyone in the area was getting weird calls like that. But it's like, we would know that by now. It's been so long. People would have reported that when they saw UM.
And I guess with old phone bills or any phone bill, you can only see calling out. You can't see calling in, right? So you can't like.
I
fill the
wondered
record.
because it was 6 months after. So it's not like they were expecting anything to be related to this.
Yeah.
Nor did, like, the one guy didn't even think
Yeah.
didn't think anything about it until he heard his friends say they got a similar call.
And like law enforcement isn't going to bug your phone for 6 months to get a weird call, you know, an international
Exactly.
call that at that point probably couldn't have been traced anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
And some people were like, well, why didn't they learn Spanish after they started getting these calls? And it's like, what? What?
God.
I'm sorry. Are they supposed to just go get some Rosetta
and
Stone
have
and
no
hope
idea
that
if
the
these
call
people
comes
are going
again?
to call again. Yeah.
The internet is so unrelenting, so unforgiving, and so mean. It
People are
really is.
idiots.
People are just, they believe the worst in people. I mean, I didn't even for 1 second doubt Nathan's story.
No. To me, he sounded genuine and traumatized.
Yeah.
Like, that's all.
Yeah. Like, oh, wow. Wow. Nice work. That's a crazy case.
It's just so sad.
I know.
But glad he survived, at
Yeah.
least.
Yeah.
True miracle.
I love the holidays. I love everything about them. But one of my favorite things is buying gifts for the people that I care about. Recently, I discovered Elfster. Elfster is the #1 Secret Santa app in the world. With Elfster, you can create a free gift exchange to make gift giving easier. You just set the time and the budget, and Elfster takes care of the rest. They even draw the names for you. You can create a virtual gift exchange, and it's an amazing way to bring friends and family together near and far, no matter where they are in the world. The coolest part is that you and your loved ones can add gifts to personal wish lists from all the brands that you love, including Amazon, Etsy, Fanatics, Nordstrom, Sephora, and Zappos. You can make multiple wish lists and then share them with different gift exchange groups. For example, if you have a Secret Santa with your coworkers for a lower dollar amount than, say, your friends and family or even your significant other. And if you're trying to figure out what you'd like for the holidays, you can choose from Elfster's curated gift guides and get some goodies. So join the over 17 million people who use Elfster for their holiday gift giving and go to elfster.com, ELFSTER.com, or download the app today.
Hey guys, it's Karlin. When I'm not listening to true crime, I do love to get down on a good beauty podcast or beauty YouTube show, but it's really hard to find a guru that's relatable and that I can actually learn something from. But I found this podcast called Beauty Uncovered, and basically each episode is just a casual interview with an expert in a certain area, whether that be beauty, health, wellness, or lifestyle. And I just find it really informative, and it's stuff you can actually apply to your real life, which I think is really cool. So subscribe now to the Beauty Uncovered podcast on Apple Pods or wherever you get your podcasts, and get your weekly guide to uncovering your beauty.
All right, what are we talking about for part 2 of season 4, episode 15?
Well, I have a Lost Loves, and it's not quite as heartwarming as it usually is, but it's still an interesting story about a dad named Mac McDonald.
And then I have a wanted segment of a sleazy dick bitch named William John Wood.
All right.
All right, so come back for part 2 next week. We love you so.
See you then.
See you there.
Cute.
Go to patreon.com/resolvedmysteries podcast if you're interested in supporting us there. If you subscribe at the $5 a month level or higher, you're going to get ad-free episodes, 2 extra episodes a month, and other goodies in the mail. To see photos we reference in the episode, follow us on Instagram at Resolved Mysteries Podcast and on Facebook and Twitter at Resolve the Pod. You can contact us at resolvedmysteriespodcast.com, resolvedmysteriespodcast@gmail.com, or at our P.O. Box, 14005, Portland, Oregon, 97293. Send us your stories for listener short stack episodes. If you want to email us your favorite unsolved mystery story or cold case or any nostalgia you have surrounding the show, send it our way because we love to hear from you. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you like us, leave a 5-star review and tell a friend, or tell 2, or tell 3. Don't forget, for every review we receive, we donate $1 to a different nonprofit.
One, two, three.
That was perfect.
That was really good.
For me.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Karlin's just like in a completely different podcast.
Apparently. I don't know what's happening over here. Okay.